All right, guys. Corey, your timing is perfect. I want to show you a couple.
Seems to be perfect.
I want to show you a couple of slides that I want to put. I was just about to send them an email to you and the ADs.
Okay. What can I do for you? Oh, just having joint take you on once a week.
I think one set of blue sheets will do us nicely. I'll let the slides speak for themselves. How's that?
Are we okay? So, right. Let's read. Yeah. Response. I think I'd love to see the response clear, because we had. I mean, even I get confused. Can we? Yeah, or underlined or something, just so that people know it's not the marking behavior, because I fear in the moment I could easily say the wrong thing, or other people believe the wrong things. There's plenty of options there to go wrong. Yeah, okay, don't flash it. Beautiful. Yes. Treat ECT1 differently from ECT0 mark traffic. Yeah, it's alternative ACN semantics effectively. Use ECN on control packets. Yeah. I don't know how good the control packet is, but I don't fear it fundamentally, so that's okay as well. That's for TCPM to figure out, and then other people to work out as well. The problem with 3 is small, but we have to make sure it doesn't impact fallback and robustness, yeah?
Understood.
Right, and experimental RCC plausible for all these, yes, but easier modifications required, yeah, okay. So my only kind of small gripe is that now we're doing all 3 our things put behind. But that's a personal gripe.
Well,
but if you do the bottom line, then I don't have that gripe even.
And here's the proposal to do it.
Morning. Hey, good morning.
Morning. We're busy talking about how to make your life easier. Give us a minute.
Yeah, I just use my backpack.
Yeah. No, we're fine. No, keep it open. Keep it open. Yeah, we're not that sick. Yeah. The ECN nonce stuff is a little bit embedded in some of the RTP work as well, but you know that, yeah?
The nonce shouldn't be embedded, just ECT1. We declare 3540p historic, and we simply that there's some minor changes to one of the to ECN for RTP that basically
or don't talk about it. Just say it's just. Well, this has some implications.
There's been some agreement on the list that one of the friends of RC 3168 is ECN for RTP. We'll get that and his little dog too.
Yeah, exactly. yeah, that's fine. And that's never mind. Yeah,
and
just the facts. Okay, are we new to just the facts in what we have?
I believe
we've got a big-ish section 1, which is like a page for some of these things, but section 2 is just text becomes text becomes text becomes text.
I believe that what I want to do is write.
I think Bob's stuff is too much stuff.
No. I believe everything is too much stuff. Even draft academics got too much material. My plan is to basically write 2 sentences that point to each of these 3 drafts and say, go look there if you want to understand why these are why these are interesting things to do. And just simply introduce those 3, state the modifications to 3168, state that an experimental RFC is required to use them.
Or standards track, of course, but
Yes, experimental or better.
Yep.
A separate section that says in connection with the ECT1 change, the EC and NOS experiment is concluded. This thing has not been deployed. 3540 is historic. And just try to keep this thing as dry as possible, leaving all of this is a change we should make to the drafts that actually describe the change. This is just the process draft that opens up the space.
I think we need more than a sentence, but not more than a paragraph in each of these.
Agreed.
Okay. All right. So I guess
And
draft committee is not that far apart from printing out material then. And some minor changes.
I could do that. What I'm thinking of doing here is for the sake of appearance, I'm happy to take material from anybody. But what I'm thinking is, and this hope this doesn't come across as too arrogant, is that I'm not involved in any of the experiments. That is, I'm not directly involved in any of these activities. In addition, I'm a 3168 author, and so I just simply write this as with me as sole author or me as editor and others as contributors. That has the right optics for the IESG.
All right, whatever. I don't care.
Yes.
It's yeah.
Okay.
But
this is not about stealing anybody's thunder. This is about getting the process. This is about getting the process out of the way of the work we want to do.
Okay. If we right. This is fine. This is probably okay, but the only reason for doing it is because of the dual queue thing. It doesn't matter so much unless you have the dual queue thing, and it really matters. Okay, but that's okay. This, I think we would only sign up for if L4S happened. Is
Right.
L4S happening? But we can still enable it.
Right. Oh, right.
I mean, so I was trying to think that we stand back enough so that we don't need to. We could charter this. We could write it. If some reasonable doubt appears afterwards, we would have to clear. We'd have to work it out. But I don't think there's reasonable doubt that you could do this stuff. The question is Bob's thing the right thing to do? But that's what the Bob was about. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Okay. Well, all right. Okay.
Okay. Experimental RFC required to use. Okay. All right. Let me see if I can make that clear. Required to use modifications. Does that help?
Yeah. I'm okay with all this. Right. Okay. Done.
Okay. Cool.
What about the scavenger class code point? How far can we go with this?
I talked to Roland late yesterday and said if we could find it, said if we had time, we'd put them up.
Yep. How far are we willing to go with the discussion? We also know if people have read it. Presume we don't do adoption call. Should we do a pre-adoption call? Should we ask for people's interest in doing work on scavenger class in this group without adopting this call?
I like that, and let's see if we can get commitment to reviewers.
Yeah.
I think
Fred's not keen, but Fred's not opposed.
I'm.
He says CS1 works, but then I don't think it does. I think the right thing to do is this.
I believe our thing to do is get interest in reviewers. I think we have to have the debate on CS1 versus something else as part of draft adoption, namely if it's got to be CS1, the draft says not CS1, adopting the draft's a mistake. So I think you're right. Okay, cool.
But that's okay. That's part of the work. Okay. I must write down what we're going to ask.
All right, hang on a minute. Now let me make sure.
We know slides from Wales.
Make sure we've got the right slides here. Yes, I've got the right slides.
We know slides from Wales. We keep saying.
Oh, we've got them. Wes sent slides.
I think.
Yeah, he has. Hang on, let me go look for them.
Okay, I can look as well.
Here you go. You like this message.
Okay. Mira saw me and said this process you just said was okay as well.
Yeah, and Spencer likes it. So
we sorted.
So yeah, I think we are okay now. So I know I've seen slides from Wes.
Oh, good.
Aren't they posted?
I'm going to look for one.
Yeah, they're up there already. 10 ACUM discussion. Look on the website. They're posted.
No,
I put them up.
all right. So.
I mean, here, show you.
Okay, you're giving evidence. No, they're not there. See,
Don't you like my yellow dinosaur? Just wait for you.
there's a cursor of some sort.
Absolutely. This is a classic Windows 95 cursor, and if you carry the cursor files forward, they still work. Here, fine. Here, my local copy.
Okay, wait. I don't know what questions we're asking.
All right. Okay.
Oh, that's true. We are not going to close this today.
Right.
Yeah, because there's still one draft outstanding. So this is a question about the future. Yes. Yeah, just to be clear.
The future. And then we have 4 candidates to work on.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't know much about that though.
Don't know much about that. We'll let people speak themselves. New algorithms. Yes, there's always more algorithms out there. Does anybody really want? Is this? Yes. I would emphasize that one.
What? Yeah, interesting. No need for the
Morning. Thank you for the slides. We've got them. I think Gory
they arrived very early.
Gory even managed to slice them into pieces, and you don't get the last minute slide prep prize. There's another set of slides that came even later.
Oh.
You don't tell him things like this.
Note to self, the latest slide.
No. We don't want to encourage this behavior, please. All right.
We can delay stuff. Yeah, fine. Next slide.
This is it. Okay, this one. Good.
Yeah, well, sort of.
So,
Yeah, I mean, right. We'll just have a discussion.
Exactly.
Read a note taker for this. Just
See that there?
Okay, all right.
All right. My yellow dinosaur went and fetched, and you just have to be patient for him to go get them.
It's a dog that fetches me things as well. Okay. What was it? This.
Okay. I'll upload slides. Should I upload the slide? Upload the slides now? No, I can wait. I'll upload it after we go through them. They'll appear as 6.1.
Yeah.
Okay. Morning, Fred.
Hello.
Let's see. And a couple of slides just hit your inbox. Hopefully no problem. Talk to both you, Miriam. I've talked to both you and Spencer about what's coming. All I've done is put it on slides. I think Gory's okay. Was lucky to be pleasantly surprised. All right. Randy, can I prevail on you to take brief notes about decisions we make and things that need attention?
Sure.
I don't need he said, she said, and a blow by blow recounting discussion. I just need major items that people want to know happened here. Thank you. I mean, I'm sure you can capture the SCTP stuff and participate in it, as you probably already know what's going to happen. Yeah, I have other standards meetings where there's a plenary, and the plenary minutes are 95% written before the plenary opens. The chair somehow has this uncanny ability to predict who is going to make a motion, who's going to second it, and what the motion is going to be. Oh, let's see. Oh, come on. We need to make this a standing TSVWG procedure here.
What? What?
What do you think?
Oh, I see.
Where's the cord?
Just like that one.
Hey, gotta have some fun. Besides, there's enough color in that slide that it doubles as a fairly effective check on the projector chroma.
You're checking from us already.
A minute.
Does it work? Does it work? There you go. Last people wrecked it.
Wait a minute, no, it's up there.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not. It's not bright enough.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, it is there.
Okay. It serves two functions. One is tells you what to do, and two is actually a pretty good chroma test and projector. There's enough colors in there. You can figure out where the chroma's off.
Do you want a camera for?
Yes, please.
Okay, you got it.
Thank you.
Oh, this thing, I'll speak to it. But we've already done the working group thing, just didn't do the adoption column list for this one.
Oh, did we do the adoption column?
No, we haven't done the adoption column.
No, we
list.
haven't.
I'm just about to do it. We did the one in the working group here. So we agreed to do it, but we haven't done it.
Let's just reaffirm that we can do the adoption column immediately. That one should be no big deal. All right, now what we actually want, of course, is okay.
American, you should be, as an American, you should be well aware of the dangers of having a live mic in political season.
I really don't care.
Except for Aaron Falk, and well, we don't know what to do about him really. He's sitting somewhere in the front. Do you think we have to have a special procedure for him?
Yeah. Did I've seen so many good comments about the Pekakucha session last night. Was it recorded or or no? You had to be there. I'll come to the next one. Sorry.
One minute. Okay.
Let me disconnect this for a minute here while I go get my other slides up on the screen. Okay. No, that's not the ones I wanted. I want that one. Bingo. Okay, now we go back here. Okay. Good morning. Welcome to the second TSVWG session in Berlin. TSVWG is new and improved. It now includes AQM, as you'll see at the end of this session. Either that or hysterical. Many thanks to Randy for agreeing to take notes and Mikhail for Jabberscribe. People volunteer for that, make the chair's lives easier. Thank you and help all of us get the work done. Blue sheets going around. Please do sign them. The secretariat has a standing offer to schedule meeting time in a closet for work groups that don't turn in blue sheets. Okay. Note well. This applies to you. Anything you say around here matters. Okay, so let me quick go through the agenda because we're about to bash it. So we have two working group drafts. We're going to do presentations on DiffServ and ECN for encapsulations. There's a third one, tunnel congestion feedback, which is ready for working group last call. So we're not going to spend meeting time on that. We're just going to send it straight to last call almost immediately. And there's 4 SCTP drafts. We are going to be looking to adopt the 4960 errata draft in fairly short order and look to Michael to tell us what we ought to be doing about the additional stuff in SCTP via UDP encapsulation. 2 individual drafts, transport options for UDP, and I talked to Tom Herbert last night, and first agenda bash is we're going to delete item 9.2. He said he can't be here. He says there's no point in presenting slides. Bob, you have an agenda, and then we have an AQM meeting. Bob, you have an agenda bash before I do my second one?
Just going back one. On tunnel congestion feedback, if we do adopt anything about L4S, then we ought to put something in that. I know we can say that during working group last call.
No, we're not. Time out. I think you're 3 steps ahead of me. So, I'm actually here to make your life easier, believe it or not.
Yep.
So the agenda bash is that at item 6.1, I want to insert, and I'm going to go to it immediately, a discussion about how to open up the space in RFC 3168 and Friends to allow experimentation like L4S's use of ECT1 and the modified congestion response. So if you want to work through those slides, I might have some really good news for you.
Okay, I just wanted to say that affects 7.3 as well. That's the.
Okay, so I don't think we should be working group last calling something when there's an experimental draft that you're going to insert in the working group last call. We have to decide if the work's finished or not now.
No, all I would suggest we do is put a sentence in saying this may be affected in future by this other work, and then that covers it, you know. Because you,
Bob, if you've got a comment on that, let's take
Let's schedule it.
list.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is Rüdiger Geib. I have a question related to diff drafts. Roland Bless submitted on less than best effort. I didn't see it so far on the list. It was on the list for Wednesday, and it would be nice
It's on the list.
tell me what we're going to do with it.
Let's carry it forward and talk at this meeting if there's time at the end.
Yes. Thanks for reminding us. Yeah, I talked to Roland last night. The goal is to give him at least 5 minutes if we have the time at the end. So that's going to depend on how long people want to talk about AQM. All right, let me go. In the tradition of just-in-time IETF slide preparation, these slides were done in the last 30 minutes. So we had a long discussion about some aspects of ECN yesterday. This is a process discussion. So there's been 3 ECN modifications proposed. Non-drop equivalent response to congestion experience marks. There's 2 drafts listed there proposing that. Treat ECT1 marked traffic differently from ECT0 traffic. That's L4S. Use ECN control packets such as TCP, SYN, and Friends. That's Marcelo's draft that was discussed over. It's actually going to wind up in TCPM. Okay. I believe experimental RFCs are plausible for all 3. If anybody fundamentally disagrees, now would be a time to say so.
I'm not able to join the Mitico one, so I can't do the Jabber stuff. Is it just me, or is anyone else in there? Otherwise, I need to report.
Mitico is empty right now. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I have 0 people, which is usually not the case. And I get network error whenever I try to type something. Is there anyone who has it working? Otherwise, I'm gonna send in a ticket.
You're doing the Jabber?
Yeah.
They monitor it, Jabber. Just take.
No. I can't connect to it. It's a 0. Not even Mitico is in the Jabber, in the online one. So someone has it working? So,
No.
No.
Okay.
Send a ticket.
Aaron Falk, yeah, it seems really important that all 3 drafts make it clear that if you send a packet out with the behavior in the draft, that you may run into boxes that are expecting the behavior in the other drafts, because it's all experimental.
Right, and this is going to be something that we'll deal with draft at a time. So, Christian.
Experimental status, Christian Rittema. Experimental status is fine, but when do we stop the experiment?
That's going to be a question for each of the draft authors. I'm trying to figure out how to start the experiments.
Yeah, but like if we do publish as experimental draft, we should have that in each of the draft.
Please stay on top of the authors and make sure they put those criteria in their drafts. So thank you, and noted. But so, all right. So experimental RFCs seem plausible. I think the sense of the room is they seem plausible. However, as it says down here, in order to publish experimental RFCs, we've got to modify the ECN RFCs starting with 3168. And in addition, L4S requires changing the ECN nonce to historic. Can we do this quickly? Because the reason I'm spending time on this is I see a bunch of really bright people who are working with technology spending time on process. I want to get the process out of their way. So here's a proposal to get the process out of the way.
sorry, this isn't alternate, this is going back one. I just realized that I thought that was draft Kademi, TCPM, ABE, or alternative best effort. That's the experimental one. The one you've written up there is the one that was going to be the one that updates 3168.
I'll get it right when we write this up there. Basically, the ECN response draft contains the proposed 3168 mod, which is why that's on this one, because this is the process. This is the process one. When I write the draft, I'll refer to the TCPM draft that has the content. Any case, proposal is to write a process draft. Write one standards track document that modifies 3168 and friends, informs the community and ISG about all this activity in one place. It'll avoid the ISG having to do a process exception for each experimental RFC. We still keep controls because you can't publish an experimental RFC without IESG approval, so the IESG retains control over ECN behavior in the internet. We can use this draft to declare the ECN nonce experiment to be over, reclassify 3540 as historic. What I'm thinking of doing is trying to write a real brief, just the facts draft. So to iterate down items 1, 2, and 3 in this slide with a sentence or two pointing off to the drafts with the well-written explanations about why this is a good idea, but not try to import 5 pages of that material. State the changes that are being made to 3168 and all the other ones, including the ECN for RTP. Declare ECN nonce experiment to be over, and see if we can get this process draft to the IESG in August so that it gets out of the way of running experiments. Spencer.
Spencer Dawkins, Transport Area Director. I'm good with everything that you're saying, except I'm intrigued by the experimental or better RFC. And what I'm confused about is, are you thinking that we will keep trying to make these code points available for future experiments?
No, what I'm thinking is that I'm anticipating success. Perhaps one of the drafts on the previous page becomes so compelling that by the time we send it off the IESG, proposed standard makes sense.
Okay, and I get that, but basically that says then we will not be able to do experiments in the future again because we're out of bids.
Yeah,
and I'm not asking you to manufacture bits out of thin air, but I just wanted to make sure I understood what we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I'll talk to you here. Reset. As somebody interested in the space, I think I'm not that interested in the experiment. I'm interested in making something work, and the experiment is a deployability experiment. So as soon as that deployability is confirmed, I would like to see these go to PS.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's right now it's quite plausible that the initial publications of these will be experimental. For that matter, the initial publication of ECM was experimental. 3168 is not the first ECN RFC. It's the proposed standard version of ECN. Sure. The first version of ECM was experimental.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Any objection to proceeding in about this fashion? Hearing none, I think I'm the designated victim to write this. Okay. And I will get these slides uploaded. All right.
Maybe just one short. Ingemar Johansson. Yeah. And I know in 3GPP, ECN has been specified for Volt, and I'm trying to get some information as regards to this, if there are any implementations whatsoever using ECN. Currently the vacation time and all, I don't get any response right now, but my gut feeling is that it's quite unlikely that there are any implementations at all.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Pat Thaler, Broadcom. There are definitely implementations using ECN.
Yeah, and it will be the responsibility of each of the folks working on items 1, 2, and 3 on this slide to deal with the existing implementations and making sure they're not breaking anything. And at least in the case of L4S, I know the L4S proponents have been paying careful attention to this. That L4S is incrementally deployable against existing ECN. Okay. All right. Fred?
Hi, David Skenazy, Apple. I'm just very confused to hear that There are no implementations of ECN.
No, that was someone speaking on behalf of 3GPP, wondering whether anything 3GPP specific was using ECN in a 3GPP specific way. Obviously, there are lots of implementations of ECN for IP.
Thank you.
Okay, and I see he's still sitting down, so I understood his remarks correctly.
Stand in the pink box.
Stand in the pink box. Did you see the graph? We use
Stand
this.
in the pink box and facing this direction.
Fred, you asked, there's your answer.
So do you have a clicker?
I'm gonna do handed
We'll do
names.
next.
Just say next, and I can put this way so you can see what's on the screen.
Okay, fine. So, so click to the next. So Tim and I talked about this at IETF 95. There was a discussion on the floor, and we were given some action items to go off and fix. Of course, what we're trying to handle is the interaction between the general IP network and wireless environments, which are a very common access path to the internet. So next. One of the big comments that we had was from Rudiger, and we fixed it. Next. Rudiger went on to ask about a particular reference, and this I've actually got a question. If I have a draft that depends on another document, I think of the other document as normative for that draft. Rudiger is saying that the status of the other document is informational, and therefore the reference should be informative. I don't care.
Yeah.
How do you guys want me to handle that?
Stick it as normative and we'll talk about it with the ideas.
If you make it, let's see, I've been here before in that I've had a draft that had a standards track draft, the normative reference to an informational draft that I thought was fully justified. It requires a little bit more attention by the chairs and the ADs because you have to call that reference out as last call. If you believe that changing
Call it out at last call, why?
Because it's what's called a down ref. I have a standards track draft referencing a non-standards track draft. This is the way the process works.
Okay, fine.
But if they basically do the right thing, if you believe that significant changes, diffs of intercon would cause significant changes to your draft, then the reference is normative and we'll deal with the process.
Okay. So
Unless
we've
Spencer
made it
wishes to comment.
informative, and that's where I'll leave it.
Okay.
You've made it informative. Spencer, do you want to say anything more?
Yeah, Spencer Dawkins, Transport AD. So the intended status for this draft here is?
It's informative, I believe.
Informative.
So if this is also informational, that's not
This
even
is
a
also
down ref.
informational.
They're both informational.
Yeah. That's
So we can
that's
just leave it as
what it is.
informational
No.
reference.
Yeah.
This one is now targeting PS, I
Is
believe.
it?
Okay, so that is a down ref.
Yeah.
Yeah, which now there's an interesting question there, which is that 4594 is informative.
And quite incidentally, 4594 was one of the targets of the down ref I was Spencer and I were dealing with.
So we have discussed possibly upgrading 4594. I haven't heard much from the people who said that they would be involved in that, and I frankly don't know particularly what to change. So I haven't done a whole lot. But if we were to have a Rev 4594, I think we would make it PS.
Okay. This one problem. So this 802.11 draft, having it go PS makes a lot of sense. If you want to make that reference normative, you can. If you want to make it informational, you can.
I'll leave it
Your choice.
informational. I'll leave
Cool.
it informational.
Okay.
And I would just note that this working group is, the chairs are some of the best at identifying down ref stuff in Shepherd write-ups. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So, okay, next slide. This is from Cullen Jennings. Cullen sent a fairly long note to the list several months ago. And so we spent some time on the phone with Cullen, and tried to address his issues. He really didn't like the CS5 mapping, so we mapped it to UP5, which seemed like the better thing to do. Next. He had some specific comments on section 424, the real-time interactive mapping, and then related to that, stepping outside the pink box, dealing with broadcast video. And if you go look at the -00 that's currently posted, you'll see there that it says CS4 is broadcast video. That's a typo, and will be fixed in the next version. But at any rate, so fine, we fixed it. We did what he asked us to do. Next. So now where we're standing at this point, this is the mapping that we're using. This is the same slide that Tim has shown several times. And, you know, if you've got heartburn, say so. Seeing no heartburn. Next slide. And the documentation from IEEE 802 basically says that the DSCP going upstream toward the internet should be derived from the 802.11 mapping. And we're saying, no, that was set by the host intending to guide the action of the network and leave it alone. So that's what he's getting at in this particular slide. So, so next slide. So I think we're ready. You know, I have a one character change to make, and that'll be the -1 version of the thing. I think we're ready for a working group last call.
Anybody got any questions on this talk? Comments on what we're doing? Because it's a few things that we're modifying and documenting here, which we haven't done previously. So, Dave?
Dave Todd, I apologize for not having paid attention to this draft. I have two issues. Could you go back to your beautiful plot of all the different mappings? Thank you very much. I think that we have a couple other proposed diff-serve code points from the L4S people. Am I wrong?
And those code points would be what?
No.
No.
Those don't exist, I think. Is that right, Bob?
Okay. And then the second one is that you're defining, in one part of the document, you talk about CS1 as scavenger, and the other one you talk about it as background. What is, and there's also UP2 left unused. It would be marvelous if we had a code point that was scavenger and one that was background.
Send draft.
Okay, I'm going to have to go look for the word background. I'm not even sure what that word means, to be honest. So,
background is 802.11 for scavenger. They actually mean the same thing.
Yes. Say again.
Andrew McGregor. Background is 802.11 for scavenger. They mean the same thing.
They mean
you have scavenger in the left side and IETF terminology.
Fine.
On the right.
We need to put them in the same place, I guess.
Roland Bleskirti. Yeah, I just have draft from that had no time, right? Talking about that. So background and scavenger is same thing. Scavenger is just a term from internet too.
So I'll go look for the word in the draft and see if I can make that more clear.
So I try to update RC 3662 and be more clear on that about potential uses, and maybe that makes it clear, but I don't. Right now, you can probably do something like having different semantics even within this class, but I guess that's too far, too much.
Yeah.
You know.
A note to the great wide world and not really being addressed in this draft. Somebody came to me 2 days ago and said, by the way, I wanted to find a whole new scavenger class. Scavenger in 3662 and as understood here is essentially the lowest priority. We don't give it any special service. This guy wanted a capability that if the queue is not 0, or if it's higher than some threshold, that we would literally drop the packet. Just the packet arrives at the AP or at the router, and we make it go away. I'm not recommending that we do that. So
would agree with that. This is Pat Thaler, putting my 802 hat on. So what's being done to make sure 802.11 is aware of the decisions that, I mean, you said you had an 802.11 comment, and I'm not sure if that came in a liaison or was from an individual, but.
That came from you standing at a microphone.
No.
No, yeah, and at IETF 95, you came to the mic and said, oh, by the way, in RFC, and I forget the number, but some number, we've got this whole mapping.
Okay. Oh, I may have commented that there's a mapping, but.
Are you suggesting that we might be able to get some more input from 802.11, or at least be able to
Well,
alert
I mean,
them to this?
I think you've got a draft that's proposing things about .11, I think.
Well,
Probably
we're
this would
actually
be
not
one.
proposing to change .11.
Okay.
We're proposing a way to use .11.
Yeah, even
We're
so, I
taking
think.
802.11 as a given.
Okay, so the current status is, we've talked about this for a while, the draft's more or less stable. We intend to be going to a working group last call.
I'd be
If
happy
we
to go
get
to a working
input-
group last call if 802.11
Yeah.
has opinions.
Then we'd love to hear them.
I think it'd be good to let them know that this draft that mentions them is going out so that they.
Is it possible to
It's courtesy,
do that
yeah.
for us, Pat? Do you-
Yeah, could you send me an email just to make sure I have the.
Yeah, please,
Oh, yeah,
please do
he's better to,
please do it.
Donald's
Right.
better to
Okay,
do
I
it because he's
personally do not
actually in
have
those
that
meetings.
email address. If one of you want, go for it. Okay, cool.
Excellent. All right, there's one other thing, Fred. We talked, Mira?
Mia Kulivan, we do have a real liaison to 802. Oh, no. Yeah, we should have, like, I don't know, that might be an official process. You can also do it unofficially, but if you want an official statement, that can happen, and I can figure that out how it happens.
I think this is proposed to change something in 802.11, but it's important that they know what we're doing.
I mean,
So,
an official statement can be like, we have this document, please look at it.
okay, there's a procedural thing here as well, because we talked also about the possibility of making this proposed standard, this document.
I believe if you look at the currently posted -00, it says it's seeking proposed standard.
Does it? I'm going to check. Look here. Nope, it says info.
It says info. Okay,
Yeah.
fine. It's info.
Okay.
So do we want it to be proposed standard? Because this is a call we can make with our AD's blessing. They make the final judgment, but if it was a possibility, it might be proposed standard, which should be in the header now. As in, we should rev it and put proposed standard in.
He's got a -1 coming. You can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Spencer, do we?
noting
Do
the
we have to
mad
publish?
rush to the mics.
We will speak to our AD and offer advice on this. But I'd rather see it put up as proposed standard for a working group last call and then change back to informational than the other way around.
Spencer Dawkins, and that's also true for IETF last call. It's easier to go down than up once you've started the publication process. So just in general, we can. It's not like assigning draft categories is a exact science, but.
Well, the thing is that the review is tighter. It has additional parameters at the proposed standard.
Yeah, let's.
Yeah, and that would not be wrong in this case. It also, if it turns out that having this be more broadly visible to 802, both Pat and I don't know who else in the room, Donald, are on the leadership coordination team between 802 and IETF. So one of us can pass that along at that level as well.
Also, Dawn, can we rely on you as the conduit to make sure that in addition to 802.11 being aware of this draft now, that when we last call it, that last call is communicated to 802.11?
Sure, although Dorothy's family will also be involved.
Yeah, okay. I'm just looking to welcome you directly in addition to whatever winds up going through the formal liaison channel, as that seems to have a few hops and hence higher latency.
Yeah, I think unofficial is fine. It's just I want to make sure that it's not something that I've
Cool.
seen here and then forget. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
The official liaison channel is also just sending email. It's not more than that.
Yeah.
And then the right person at the other side makes sure people are aware of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do that.
But really, that's-
Well, we can do that. Other comments?
Yeah, quick question. Media Kulin, sorry. I'm not disagreeing for proposed standard, but what's the reasoning exactly for it? To go for a proposed standard instead of informational?
Well, I think that's up to the working group. What do you?
No, I
what do
mean,
you
like,
guys want?
what would be the argument? Why do you need proposed standard instead of informational? I'm not opposing to it, but I just want to know why you think it's important.
The reason 4594 went informational was that it didn't have to go through a political morass to get to the other side. But it represented the combined experience of a number of operators and enterprise networks and this, that, and the other that were in fact using it. And often using it in different ways. So we had to basically say, pick one, I'm picking this. And so it became informational basically for political reasons. Today we might call it BCP. Now, this one, Tim set it to the same status as 4594.
Okay.
And I just got it in my head that it was supposed to be PS and.
But you basically just said
happened
it
to
should be
wrong.
BCP, actually.
I'm sorry?
You just said it should be BCP.
We want we want implementers to do this and not something else creative. And I think do this and don't get creative is an argument for proposed standard.
Such as the GSMA set of different.
Okay. No, okay, it's fine. Yeah.
Yes.
Michael Aronson, yeah, if it helps for implementers to actually do this, and the proposed standard makes that more likely, I would also like to see that, even though if it might be more discussions and harder to push through politically, if that helps, I think we should try to do that.
Okay, so now I just threw out BCP, and let me explain the argument there. PS is designed for something that we could implement, realize that, oh gee, we forgot a message or we left out a state or a transition or something, come back and fix it, prove interoperability, and take it to internet standard. BCP is a one-shot standard. If I want to change it, that's also a one-shot standard and obsoletes the old one. But it simply is. It's a statement that this is the way it is. And the funny thing about diff-serve code points is it's kind of hard to tweak them. They are what they are. And so you could argue that it's a policy statement.
So Michael Abrams again, but for BCP, don't you actually have to prove that people are doing this and that it works well?
No,
That is not included?
It's recommendations for best current practice.
Yes.
It's not documentation of current practice. It's recommendations for the best current practice.
So at the time that BCP 38 was published, nobody was doing ingress filtering, for example.
When was that published?
15 years ago.
Okay, I know people who did that. Okay, I ran into ingress filtering in 1998.
Okay.
And they would actually not take it away.
We didn't know you were doing that.
I was a customer at the time and ran into this problem. I was multi-homed in 1998 and couldn't send the packets the wrong way.
Okay.
We send an email to the list.
This is Rüdiger Geib. If you put
Yeah.
this on standards track, shouldn't we fix the less than best effort as scavenger issue because it says
I'm sorry.
CS1. If we put
Shouldn't
this
we fix the
scavenger less than best effort issue, because here it says DSCP is CS1 and we got no standard on that.
So the
Put this
wording
one-
of scavenger and background, is that what you're asking about?
No, the DSCP. Because
The
your
problem
draft says-
here, the problem here is that and we'll about to explain more detail. In contrast to everything else in this list, CS1 has an infirm foundation. There is no standards track document that says CS1 ought to be used as a scavenger class. In practice, 4594 is what assigned CS1 to scavenger class. 3662 did not.
Yeah, and the reason for that.
That was also political at the
3662
time.
described scavenger, but Internet 2 was using CS1. So we said, screw it, do what they're doing.
Yeah.
Okay. So actions required from this. The chairs will send a note to the list advising people that we are considering this for proposed standard. Wait a week. If we don't get any adverse reactions, please submit your update as a proposed standard.
Okay.
Boilerplate.
Yeah, I would,
Well, so what I'd actually like there is a recommendation from you guys from the working group. Which way do you want it?
Yeah.
Tell me how you want it.
Our email sent it.
I believe the sense of this room is proposed standard. Do I hear any objections? You have a recommendation.
Okay, cool. Okay. So at any rate, yeah, we think it's ready for working group last call, which is not to say that we think it's perfect, but we think it's pretty darn close.
Yeah.
And now, did he have anything else on that last slide?
No.
That was the only, yeah, okay.
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's, I also think it's ready for working group last call. I should do a careful review during working group last call, but I think that is the right next step.
Okay, cool. So I'll take a look at the Word background and see if I can sort that out. I'll post a -1 anyway, for the typo.
Okay. And we'll put the typo.
And I'll put the
that-
word proposed standard in there.
that'll do
Well, we should tell the list first that
Yes.
we are considering
Yes,
this proposed
okay,
standard
fine.
thing.
Tell me what
Yes.
you want to do, and then I'll post it. So,
Right.
okay.
Thank you, Fred.
Okay.
Phew. Next thing.
Bob, you're up for this one. And I think you also want to talk briefly about your 60/40 not abyss draft.
Yeah.
Right, this one has been around a long time now, and you'll see at the end we're trying to go to working group last call on it. Next. So the purpose of this one is guidelines, just for a recap for anyone who's not aware of it, on adding explicit congestion notification ECN to protocols that encapsulate IP, which is tunnels, lower layers. And it's not straightforward because it's cross-layer, and being cross-layer and ECN, it's also related to the fact that the lower layer needs to know whether the upper layers would be able to handle ECN. And so that's a problem with incremental deployment, but it's also cross-organization. We've already done liaisons with IEEE and 3GPP because a lot of these lower layer things are in other organizations. And it's also liaison with other IETF groups as well. So recent activity on this. We've got 2 outcomes from the liaison, which isn't obviously the draft itself, but it's designed to wrap up anything that, or the draft is designed to wrap up anything that comes out of the liaison. And the 2 outcomes are, firstly, 3GPP specs mandate ECN marking where the packet data convergence protocol header is, and it says mark the ECN field. And obviously the ECN PDCP hasn't got an ECN field, but it means mark the IP header inside. But at that point, you're doing robust header compression, so you are compressing a payload that you want to mark the packet. So I think they've just got to say which order you do those things in, because it's obviously difficult to mark a packet if you've just compressed it. And then the other one is there's a misunderstanding, which we understand from talking to the people who wrote it, was a misunderstanding on whether AQM marking is on/off, or sort of as the congestion gets stronger, the marking gets stronger. And we've pointed out that there's an interoperability problem with other parts of networks if this stays on/off and the others are incremental, because it means they will trigger, with one ECN mark from another network, they will think it's meant to be on/off, so they'll trigger their congestion response with just one mark of dropping down a codec or something. And so I've asked the question there, ought we to send a final formal liaison, giving pointers to this advice, and we've written one, John and I together, and sent it to the chairs. I just sent an update about the header compression. And so that's all the liaison activity. Do you want to say anything about that? Or do we?
I have that in my inbox. Based on what you described, it sounds like we probably ought to close the loop and send the liaison back to 3GPP. And I see someone at the mic who might have some additional input on this.
Not especially as regards to liaison, but as regards to the misunderstanding of the Ingemar Johansson, by the way, and as regards to a misunderstanding of AQM marking, I believe it's best actually to treat the volt as a sort of a different animal as regards to ECN marking that's confined within some sort of special network or whatever.
Right. Well, we could do that by saying it should use, say, something like the voice admit diff-serve code point or something like that, as given that's, I think, what they're trying to do. But I'm wary of telling them how to solve the problem. We're identifying the problem. I don't want to sort of make it look as if we know, we're telling them we know what we're doing and you don't, Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. So, Mike, having sent the last liaison, my sense is we might as well go ahead and close the loop. I have that text in my inbox. It'll be on my queue of things to do coming out of this week.
Thank you. Yeah. Because I want to try and get it through the rest of I don't know whether it has to go through IAB and all that, does it? Or can it go straight from you?
It goes straight from me with an AD approval, I believe. I think there's an AD approval step in the liaison statement getting sent.
I'll CC it to Spencer.
We'll get it.
Because I'd like to get it, the IETF sort of goes dead next week, and so I'd like to get it out of the process before next week. Yeah.
Do you have more, Bob?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll wait then.
Okay. And the other main activity is we're split out from the encapsulation guidelines, which is intended to be a BCP. There's a very short section that updates a load of tunnel specs, proposed standard tunnel specs. We thought it was unfair on all those people who wrote those tunnel specs to give them a 30-page document when there's actually just one section they need to read. So we've split that out into another draft, and I'll talk about that on the next slide. And otherwise closed off all open issues. Right. Next. So this is the split out bit. I talked about that. I introduced Intera to this yesterday, so they know about this. And the problem is, it's very simple. We wrote a draft 6040. We wrote an RFC 6040, which was a proposed standard on how to tunnel ECN, and said its scope was all IP in IP tunnels. And most people have correctly assumed that when we say IP in IP, we also mean IP in shim in IP, but some people haven't, and so we thought we'd better clear that up. And we've also said at the moment that it should apply in the case of that shim type arrangement, but we're specified only if the shim and the header are added at the same time, because obviously if the shim is added in one place and the header is in another, you can't expect the machine to go back and read what the inner header was before. So so we've specified it as tightly coupled shim and outer header so that it's meaning where they're added in the same step. And that affects all the GRE RFCs, all the layer 2 tunneling protocol RFCs, version 2 and 3, all the point-to-point tunneling protocol, or the tunneling point-to-point tunneling protocol RFC, and it also affects non-IETF protocols like GTP, all the user plane and control plane stuff with GTP, for GPRS tunneling, and VXLAN. And there are already 2 drafts going through the IETF that refer to 6040 already, so we don't need to tell them to do that. One clarification in the footnote, I wrongly named this. It shouldn't be BIS. I didn't realize that was a keyword for a complete update. This is a complete replace. This is not a complete replace, it's an update. So if this gets adopted, I will rename that to something else.
Okay, and if it helps, I can provide a useful example of a tunnel which this would not apply. IP in MPLS in UDP and IP. The initial the first MPLS label is applied way upstream of UDP getting its hands on this, and the thing that puts MPLS in UDP and IP is not going to go hunting up the MPLS label stack to find the IP header.
Mia Kulevin, does it actually really update the GRE and all the other stuff? Because it would only update if this stuff already talks about ECN, but what's said is wrong and you want to update it.
No, exactly. The point is to say 3168 in effect should have updated you, or
Yeah, but I mean, you only need to update if in those drafts is something written about ECN that you.
No.
That's not the case.
No,
You
this
just say this draft also affects the other tunneling things. I don't think that this needs a real, like an update mark or something. Like
well, no, we're saying we've updated the internet protocol, which you've got a spec on tunneling, and so you have to update two of the fields in the internet protocol propagate through. DiffServ propagates down, ECN propagates down and up, and so your tunnel has to be updated. We're not saying that suddenly everyone, in the whole world, all the tunnel specs have to update because we've written its RFC. What we're saying is, next time you come around to doing any modifications and you check the RFCs and you find, oh, my tunnel spec's got an update against it, and you find, the latest IP is different from what it was when I wrote this tunnel implementation. I mean, that's how I understand updates. If I'm wrong.
Michael Abramson. So if an implementer says, oh, a customer comes around and wants to get ECN in this protocol that currently in the standard doesn't mention ECN, do you want them to take this because it's generic enough that even if, I don't know, but even if the standard document doesn't even mention ECN, they can take this mechanism and apply the same thing, and it doesn't matter which tunneling protocol. This is just generic, all of it.
Yeah, I suppose going back to answering your question and Mia's question, they are doing something about the ECN field at the moment because you have to put an ECN field in your tunnel header.
Yeah.
And if you've got a outer or an inner that comes in with a non-zero ECN field, then you do have to do something about that.
Yeah, but before you said next time the people who write if they touch the document again, do you want them to just reference this draft and say do this?
Exactly.
And that's the only thing they should have. They should not mention.
And that's all these two have done on the bottom.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that's what basically. If you come in again at these documents, you just want them to rip out anything they have to about the ECN and just say do this.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they have to think about whether it's possible to implement it. Not just.
But that's a general idea. This replaces anything else that is said anywhere about ECN handling in IP and in something in IP.
Yeah.
Bob, got a question for you on that note. Do you have the case in which the ingress does this, but the egress doesn't cover it?
Yes.
Because the risk in that case is the ingress propagates ECT, you get CE mark, and the egress and the egress strips without propagating.
That's all covered in RFC 6040, which is this is saying use it. Yeah.
All right.
Next. Right. So these are there's been quite a few deltas. The tightly coupled shims stuff has all obviously been taken out. Well, not completely taken out. It's just been reduced down and refers to the other one. We've added Trill as an example. That's been going on in parallel. They're now adopting adding ECN support to Trill, and they're really quite keen on it all. Or particularly the chair is. I was in the routing area meeting, and she was sort of going ecstatic about how we're doing ECN in Trill, which is quite good. What's the next one? Oh yeah, I've added some stuff that hopefully will satisfy Gori's original comment that's been outstanding for quite a time on whether it should be a should or a must for the drop behavior at the egress, and I've just given explanation of when it should be a should and when it should be a must. Right.
Okay.
So maybe you want to have a look at that, Gori.
Yes.
I'll look. Speed up forward mode. Yeah, I've sort of put in some explanation more with an example about PDCP so the 3GP people can go and read it, and it's got a specific example for them. Added the acknowledgements references, and I had a list of open issues in the appendix, and I've marked them all as updated, resolved. Right, next. So I think we can finalize the liaison. Hopefully we can working group last call this, and hopefully we can get the extra little bit that we've split out, run through the process fairly quickly.
Okay, this draft is very recent, so we're probably going to run the adoption call for this on the list. But how many people in the room, raise your hand if you've read Bob's 60/40 BIS draft, please. Yeah, that's not enough to run an adoption call in the room. We will run the adoption call on the list.
I've had some reading in Interior, but it's only 2 pages, so please, you know, you can.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a question, Aaron Falk. I apologize if you mentioned this, but is there a lot of implementation or interoperability experience with this? It seems like this is kind of finicky to make sure we get it right.
There are implementations, particularly IPsec implementations, but I can't say that I've seen any experiments, if you like. It just works, you know.
Nice when that happens.
Yeah. But what it would be useful to do, and I haven't seen done, and I haven't done, is actually measuring whether the tunnels are working to the spec. You know, injecting stuff inside the tunnel and checking that it comes out the other end like it should. Yeah. And that's maybe something that Stuart and the people from Apple will be particularly interested in. That at the moment we're not seeing any CE coming out of a network, but if it does start coming out of or being applied in a tunnel, we need to check that it's going to come out of the tunnel as well.
Mia Kulevind, I'm still, so now I looked at the draft, the 2 pages in the meantime, and I'm still not sure if update is here the right level, but label, but yeah, we can figure that out.
Yeah, please do, because I don't always understand the process things, even though I've got a grey beard. Yeah.
I think if we say we update the draft, we should specifically say the text which would be inserted into those drafts. And this isn't quite where we're at.
No, it's just refer to RFC 6040, that's all it has to say.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
So the point
This is something we need to talk about and get right, because the use of updates is very inconsistent between different areas. It's a cross-area draft. We need to just get it correct, and everyone needs to understand the word to mean the same thing, or a keyword means nothing.
Yeah. Right. The point is, it doesn't update any text. It basically says this text is missing in the draft, which
that's still update.
Yeah, in particular.
If you phrase it like this, it's still
Right.
an update. And like the reason for having the label there is to make sure that people actually look at the right draft, right? So it kind of makes sense, but it's
sort of
not clear. It's
when someone,
like on the
when an
borderline.
implementer looks at a draft, if they see the updates field and they say, whoa.
Yeah, but on the
I've
other
gotta
hand,
read
you know,
this.
if you implement stuff and you want to use ECN, it doesn't say anything about ECN, you probably have to look somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in particular, Bob, it's a 2-part deal. You put the updates header in your draft, and then you need a very small section. So if somebody came to your draft, say from the GRE RFC, there is a section that says exactly what got changed in GRE.
In each one of those.
You're going, yes. If nothing else, Miria's colleagues on the IESG are going to look for those sections. I've had ADs ding me for not saying exactly what I updated. If you're going to update a dozen drafts, you're going to have to write either one section that says exactly what the update is for each of them, or maybe you can combine some of them.
Okay, so read it very quickly while it's still a 2-page draft.
Be careful what you wish for, Bob.
And we should probably bring this to Int area or somewhere else, because
No,
you did.
I
Okay,
did
so
think
what
that
was
on
the
your-
feedback?
You know, they
nobody
basically
was
said,
interested.
oh, you forgot this tunneling protocol that, you know.
Interior is fine with it.
Yeah, they're fine with it, yeah.
And Interior have been shown the previous version before it was stripped out as well into a separate document.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Another question, perhaps.
Yeah, well, just comment. Tommy Polly, Apple, just regarding experience with it. So yes, I mean, we did 60/40 for IPsec only. I don't think we've ever seen any actual useful marking of that. That is what broke all of our ISP friends, as you know. But I think, yeah, we would be interested in probably actually, testing more in the future to actually see the effect of how these markings are going in and out of the tunnel. So advice in that area would be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll work with Bob. We'll work with Bob offline to make sure that Bob, the chairs, and the ADs agree on exactly what update text belongs in this that does not need a public discussion on the mailing list.
Spencer Dawkins, Transport AD for this. I don't know that you have to have a section like that, but I know that smart authors do.
So. Get this sorted.
Yeah, we've got a large queue of drafts. I mean, I was looking at this last night, for working group last call. We are probably gonna have, if we're gonna come close to our aspirations and the revised milestones, we're gonna have to run about 2 working group last calls a month between now and Seoul. So get ready, here it comes.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. So, Michael, we've actually split your slides into 4 separate decks. We just we'll get through them.
Okay, so this is about 4 drafts, not that much stuff. The stream scheduler document, last IETF was version 05. We had some discussions in the meantime on automating this based on a guy implementing this in Linux about the API. So in STDP, we have also API sections always in, and we cleaned that up in a way that before that we had a stream scheduler, especially if iData is supported, and another one if it's not supported, and this gives you an error course or error situations where you request this but don't have that. So we cleaned that up and having a single stream scheduler, and it behaves differently if iData is enabled or not, and it's described there. The only thing you can't get is a non-interleaving scheduler functionality, but using interleaving. So if you don't want to have this, don't enable interleaving and use the stream scheduler and you're fine. So I think it simplifies more than it hurts getting that away. We addressed all known issues. We implemented this a bit further in the hackathon, figured out that we have to have in the iForward TSN a flag because we have message identifiers, and in the old stuff we have only message identifiers for ordered messages. In the new one we have it for ordered and unordered, so we have to indicate whether this message identifier applies for ordered or unordered. Besides that, the stuff is implemented, it's sort of running, which means it needs some debugging, but the stuff is completely implemented. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah, the implementation status is basically we have an implementation in a simulation environment. Felix did some interrupt testing, that worked. We have the FreeBSD implementation. We fixed the last issue, and if you go to the next slide.
This is the last one I have here.
Okay, so that's okay.
When will you be ready for working group last call on this?
Right now, because I submitted yesterday the 07 version, which includes everything.
Magnificent answer. We are looking forward to last call on this draft. This is one of our 2 remaining drafts that is part of the WebRTC tarball. And the sooner we get our piece of the tarball done, the happier we are all going to be.
Yeah. So read it. I mean, everything is. All known issues are addressed. It's
Great.
implemented. So
Right.
start whenever you want.
Working group chair, I'm not willing to start until I have some reviewers. Is anybody interested in reading this document or reading the code or?
Reading the code would be good.
Oh!
And I got 2 more volunteers.
Randall, could you read the code
Thank you.
and read the document at the same time and see if they're the same? Sure. Okay, fine. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay.
So Dave Todd said, I think that's Michael, okay.
And I think
Yes. Okay, fine.
Okay, cool.
So we have people to read it.
and I think Randall Jacob also wanted to do it from the WebRTC community. So it might be good to have someone from there.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Randall is very good if he does.
So the chairs will read it and we'll start a working group last call at the appropriate moment.
Dave Todd, quick question. Is there a Linux version of this implementation yet?
Not yet, but Marcelo, whatever the name is. Pardon?
No.
No?
No, different one.
Different one. He got an acknowledgement. He said he's implementing it for Linux.
All right, put me in touch if you would, please.
Okay.
Randall Jessup said on the Jabber that he'd read as well.
Goodwill, not that one.
Yes, and thank you, Randall. Good review from the WebRTC community is greatly appreciated. Okay.
Okay, so next document. This is still individual submission. It was 4960 erratas. Go to the next slide.
We are there.
Okay, so we currently are addressing 29 issues, so it's increasing. Every issue is covered by a section. The section says what the issue is, what the old text is, what the new text is, and describes what the change is. So the idea is once we have finished this document as an informational RFC, we will edit RFC 4960, which is the SDP base spec, based on this document, which gives the deltas. And then it should be pretty easy to progress 4960. We did this with earlier versions of 4960, and it also gives people a simple document to watch the changes between the document. We use an issue tracker at GitHub. We still have 15 open issues, but some of the issues we have pull requests for. Some of the issues we discussed this week, which are not an issue anymore. So we have about 10 issues where we need to work on, and whatever comes up during discussion. Next slide, possibly. Address upcoming issues, address the issues and the issue tracker. And the status is, I think you ran a adoption call last IETF, wanted to confirm it on the list, but didn't, or maybe
We haven't yet
forgot
done
it, or
that.
whatever.
So let's take another hum, and then we'll go for a working group adoption call if that proves good. Think carefully. This is a proposal to publish an informational document documenting what we will do to revise the proposed standard for SCTP. If you support work in this space and think this current informational document is a good starting point for doing that update, please hum no. If you think this document is not the right basis for doing that update, or if the update shouldn't proceed, please hum no.
Silence.
I take the same consensus. Silence. We should proceed to a working group adoption call. The chairs will arrange that.
Okay. So this is pretty fast. The focus was on iData, so nothing has happened on the net support. So basically, there were no changes since the last IETF, and the to-dos, if they're on the next slide, are still the same. So make it clear what a NUT implementer, a middlebox implementer has to do, and what an endpoint implementer has to do. This is moving text around and making sure that the cross-references get right. And there was a request to focus on, you can also do a V6 to V4 translation. Currently, all the examples there are V4 examples, but it's just dealing with longer addresses.
Yeah, you're going to get dinged for all V4 examples.
Yeah, okay. I need to figure out if there are short V6 addresses I can use.
2001 DBA::1.
Okay, so your status slide is,
Thank you. So I can handle that.
okay, that's that one. Okay,
That's done. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. You're missing a title page there?
Something, all right. Next.
Because the authors didn't split it into chunks, and someone had to do it over breakfast while he was drinking his coffee and eating his muffins and all that kind of stuff.
All right.
Well, I like bundling.
So you do. Well, there's the application.
So if you're still there, I mean,
No, that'll be new. That'll be new titles. Anyhow, on the NAT draft.
NAT draft.
Sorry, on the NAT draft. When do you think it'll be ready for working group last call?
for the next IETF. I mean, it depends on how much work is on iData, but that stuff is now
okay, so we're going to try to work group last call iData soon. It'd be very nice to be able to work group last call this before Sol. So
okay,
the work group chairs would. This is the other draft that's part of the WebRTC tarball. Nat, I'm pretty sure. I thought
No,
it was.
it's not. No.
Oh, good.
It's
I'm gonna work
only
on
You
it.
don't
I-
need to worry about
It's
it.
only
Okay, I'll
IData.
stop
So
worrying.
net is
Yeah.
kind of relaxed thing.
Okay, good. Okay, we go slow on that, but I do want that WebRTC tar, I do want our part of WebRTC tarball to be done sooner rather than later, because at some point, they're gonna start coming around and looking for the people who have the last drafts. I don't want to be on that list.
Yes. So iData, it's from the SAP part.
Okay,
So
good. All right, so,
Okay.
all righty, and then, here we go.
yeah, so last time I presented this additional considerations for UDP encapsulation. We have an RFC about how you encapsulate UDP, SCDP and UDP, and we're using this a lot in the NEAT project. And while using it, we figured out that we have some issues with that RFC. The issue is that there is missing text. So you can guess what the intention is, but it's not there. And if you don't do it right, then it can end up in stealing associations. So it's better to address this by providing additional text. This document tells you, please do this in this case. And I discussed it last time with one of the former transport ADs, and the result was, instead of updating that UDP encapsulation document, write a BIS. So then the whole document is not that large, so then you have only a single document which covers this stuff. And this needs to be done. And there is one thing which I would like to add, and this is a clarification how to deal with embedded addresses. This means if you get an encapsulated packet and someone puts a UDP encapsulated packet and lists IP addresses, and then you apply the UDP encapsulation port to all these addresses. So the endpoint knows when he puts in the addresses, and he will only do it if he is sure that he runs UDP encapsulation on all these addresses. And so the main thing is transform this into a BIS document with exactly these changes.
Right. And so the expectation or process point of view is that there'll be at some point this BIS draft will appear, and that'll be the draft that you'll ask the working group to adopt?
Yep.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
Cool.
Okay, so from here,
Spencer Dawkins, Transport ID, just a question. So I'm expecting something that would be coming in with a replaces header, right?
What?
This is.
So the BIS draft would come in with replacing the previous draft?
Yes,
Yeah.
completely.
Yes. You're getting good advice from your former transport ID. I just wanted to make sure that you were getting good advice from them.
Thank you. Yes, the 80s have to check this occasionally.
So what next?
Okay, so what's left?
I want to do, what was this one?
Yes, that one's next. So that one we're not doing.
And we want to
And
do.
then we go to AQM. So
No. I think we should do, anyway, do that one first.
let's,
With from Joe.
yeah.
I think we should do the rolling plus system because we're touching on the topic, so we should.
Okay, let's see if we can go through this quickly. And I think what the chair has just decided to do is to bash the agenda. And since we were able to drop out Tom Herbert's presentation, Roland, we're going to slot you in there 5 minutes, and then we can go turn to the AQM working group.
Okay. I get to stand in the pink box, which is cool.
Okay.
And
I get to move your slides. I'm in charge.
I get to pretend to be Joe Touch, which means I'm in charge. So, this.
Don't ask me to be Fred.
Okay, this draft's about one way in which you could change UDP to utilize the fact that the IP length field is different to the UDP length field, and thereby include options in UDP. Some say this should have been in from the very beginning because a useful thing to have in a datagram protocol, and it's something we could now retrofit to UDP. It should be compatible with the current legacy use of the internet. Whether it's compatible with APIs, Joe thinks so far it is. It uses an option checksum, so it's got a safety feature for the options, and it's useful for things like out-of-band fate shared signaling, so you can send options with your UDP packet, and the options only get there if the UDP packet gets there, which is kind of a useful thing we have in many other protocols here at the IETF. You can use it for soft state optimizations and other optional optimizations. And you can use it for a number of emerging extensions, perhaps GUE, perhaps stuff in TAPS, maybe other stuff. Potentially useful. Update 03 clarified the space available for UDP and IPv6. Implementations available in FreeBSD, and there's a Linux implementation underway. Well, Joe would like to consider this as a working group item and asks if we have it as a working group item, should it be experimental or informational? Oh, experimental or standards track, sorry. Informational is the other option. If I was sitting on the chair over here, I'd say, well, there's a third option. Joe says experimental or standards track, to quote Joe correctly. And is that the end of our slides?
Let's see, he's got.
Oh, well, one of the important things here is to just make people clear that this is different to UDP Lite in that all-important way. It uses the same protocol number as UDP. If you had a network which functioned correctly in my terms, it wouldn't matter. If we have a network with middle boxes and other devices in the way that worry about the protocol number, this one gets through, and where UDP Lite might not. Other things do differ, and you can see them highlighted in the table here.
Sorry, Christian Ritema, Microsoft. Sorry, what's the purpose of hiding the data from the application layer?
Yeah. It's much more useful. The networks, the transport's much more important than the application. Okay, at this point, Joe will press the destroy the person with the pink box. That was not the point. No. The data after the UDP length stuff doesn't appear as application data. It appears as options data, which is passed to the application as additional data, not the data that's being communicated across the stream. So such when you use TCP or DCCP and you have options, they get passed up by an extra call, not the main data call.
Okay, so hide from the application layer is a bit of a misnomer, isn't it?
I'm not commenting on the slides because they're not my slides. I'm presenting on behalf of the author.
It will deploy with not updated applications, right? You can send it to a receiver and the transport gets this information, and if the application doesn't know about it, you will not destroy the application.
I wouldn't have an argument like that. Because it will turn into an argument if you say that.
Yeah.
No, but no, it's
No, I'm just saying, you're going to have an argument.
no, it's really not about hiding, but it's a deployment story here. That's all.
This is Spencer Dawkins, the transport AD, just saying that the plus pop was actually yesterday, and it will be the same conversation here.
Oh.
Except I think in Plus they were hoping for some network processing, and therefore they have motivations perhaps for putting some of their data at the beginning of a packet. This would actually appear at the end because that's where this space we're identifying here is. So there's a maybe slight difference in the positioning of this data, which could be a very important difference for some applications.
Stuart Church at Apple. It was interesting, we just had representatives of Apple, Microsoft, and Google all at the microphone. My read on this is it's not hide from the application X. With the current UDP APIs, applications don't get to see it.
Yes.
I think that's an accurate statement.
Lorenzo Coludi, Google. I think, it would be nice to see some of the use cases here. At the end of the day, an application can do what it wants with the data at the end of its own packet. So, it's just a convenience function at this point. It's just something that when you call send and receive, it's presented to the application as ancillary data in an out of band that's AC message, as opposed to, when it's returned, is not.
I think the key point here is this would semantically allow it to be understandable by the hops along the path, where putting some extra bytes on the start or the end of your application payload, that the hops along the path have no idea what that means. This would be a standardized way to add options to UDP, the way they're added to IP and TCP.
But as an app, you could implement this today in user space without any support from the operating system.
Sure,
you could just send this data at the end of your packet.
And maybe I get first reply because I tend to be Joe, right? And Joe gets But in this mechanism, because this data is actually visible to the stack, and the stack knows about it, exactly the opposite can happen. The stack can use this data to do something useful on behalf of the application.
So here comes the question I wanted to ask.
Yes.
So must the network not touch this? That's the question. Did you understand the question? I can rephrase the question.
I understand the question. I'm wondering how good transport people are at saying the network must not touch this. How we could actually
Sorry, all right,
do
let me
that.
rephrase the question.
Yeah.
Is it stated in the draft that network must not touch this data? That should be an easy question to answer.
Yeah, it should be.
It's an end-to-end protocol. Like,
Is it a yes
Okay.
or a no? Like, I don't understand.
I'm like, I don't think that, I don't know the document by heart. I don't think it says it, and it makes me sad if we have to say it.
No, then it should be easy to say.
Look, is it okay for application to negotiate end-to-end whether that feature is used or not? And corollary, is it okay for application to drop any packet that has an unexpected set of data after the packet length?
You can answer that one. Yeah.
So if you negotiate it, you can just put it in the payload. You don't need this hack.
Yeah.
And if you can't drop it, because if the application don't know about it, this information will just get lost. So nobody knows about it.
And that's precisely why I want to drop any packet that contains such thing if I don't expect it, because that's the only way I can prevent random insertion in the network.
So, yeah, sorry, but that's like how it's not implemented like this. Like if you no, but that's the nice hack about this, because if you use an UDP socket, then just the information that is within the payload officially will reach the application. And this is like some hack to make some additional space available that is just lost when nobody knows about it. So you don't have to negotiate with the other end. You can just try and send it, and if nobody understands it, nothing breaks, it's just lost.
Yeah. What you describe here is a side channel that is uncontrolled and unsecured. I intend to make sure that we drop any packet that has a discrepancy between the IP length and the UDP length.
Yeah, and
Wow, there you go.
I think we're looking at this different ways.
Yeah.
I see the plus BOF as the place where we decide what we signal and why, and what's modifiable by the path and what's integrity protected. This draft is proposing a place that information could be put.
Yes.
And those are two totally separate decisions, but this is a container that could be used by plus.
I only had a informational question in that IETF works in protocols. Is there anyone working on improving the APIs to UDP? Is there a home for that?
The IETF can work on API requirements, and it can provide documentation such as we do in the RFC series. It doesn't actually do those standards though.
Okay, we are still stuck with the standard design in 1970 for this stuff.
Well, okay, but TAPS is trying to move on, and I think there is energy here to move on and produce better documentation for what we expect the API to be about. So if you want to write drafts about what you think the API should be about, that's fine. If you want to go and standardize them, we still think POSIX is the right place for doing that. We still think POSIX is the right place. Sorry. Whatever. But I'm saying it's good to get this stuff documented here. Even with my chair hat on, I would say that.
Learns the community. So I don't want to understand the goal too closely because I might not like it. But what I want to, what I would like to understand is, because like otherwise we'll get into an argument perhaps, or we risk getting into an argument. What I'm trying to understand here is, if in the case where you might want to use this to have the network insert information that is not, it's not the goal.
No.
Did I miss something about what the use case is? Can you
Yeah, probably.
No, so this is documenting a hack that actually already exists. Everybody can use it. It's just documenting it. And the purpose is having something like TCP option semantics, and you could actually put, for example, timestamps in there as you have in TCP that would be used by the UDP transport layer for doing something.
Right. Another trick that I expect to see somebody try is that right now the UDP checksum's kind of painful because it's a header. I expect to see somebody try a trailer checksum.
You can set it to 0 if you want. You can rewrite it to 0 and it's valid. Nobody will check it on the other end if you want. Okay, so then you didn't, but like, I'm still confused because you didn't describe a goal. So if you're saying that what I suggest is not the goal, I mean, because I said, if you wanted to use this for this, and you said that's not the goal.
Okay. So things I would personally think about it. I'm not Joe, remember. I'm not chair. But things I would be interested in doing is timestamps, padding, maybe doing path MTU discovery, things like this, which we have in things like DCCP because it has options or chunk capability, and UDP doesn't have it.
Great.
Now, we can do that currently using this thing, but it's a hack, as in we don't document it.
So one thing I wanted to say is that why can't you just, if you're doing it using network, if you're changing this information in the network, or at least not in the application. Okay, if it's in the application, it's either because you don't want to update the application,
yes,
or because you want an out-of-band mechanism. So assuming it's inserted in the stack or in the network, then what I don't understand is if the receiver, if more than one device on the network understands this, let's say the one close to the sender, one close to the receiver, why can't you just insert it at the beginning of the payload or as an extra header?
Because
you could do what you want. Like
sure.
you can fragment it. You can.
Yeah. So we could use magic numbers or something to pull that out. But there is no transport way of doing it because to the transport, the data is the data. But this place, we can put additional things.
But you have a one-way thing where the packet is being rewritten and never touched, and it gets to the receiver.
Yeah.
So you don't have something stripping it out at the end.
Let me ask my question, and I think it might help you. I'm not sure, but okay, Michael A. Ramsey. So if I understand this correctly, this is in the UDP stack on the operating system.
Yes.
So the user space
Correct.
process cannot generate these packets as it is today. An unprivileged process using the socket UDP API cannot generate this packet because then the operating system will enforce UDP len. So this stuff goes in the operating system.
Correct.
So unmodified applications are not changed. They will never see this information unless they use something else.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. So okay.
Right.
Did that answer?
Right.
Okay.
Right. In particular, does not deliver, I think was clarified, which is that if you use existing socket APIs, you can't insert this stuff and you won't see it because existing socket APIs are defined against UDP, not recognizing that there's this potentially hidden space beyond the end of UDP and the end of IP.
My name's Tim Shepard, and I don't think I was aware of this before I started reading the draft and watching your presentation. And I know you're not Joe, but I think I got it quickly what it was that's being proposed, that it's an end-to-end option from the one UDP stack at one endpoint stack at the other point, and why people thought the middle of the network would be looking at this. It's like, whoa, why are they thinking that? And I was back reading the draft, trying to figure out where it suggests that sort of thing, and I don't think it does. So I got it. I think I got it, but I think there's something wrong with the way this was presented today, and perhaps, and as far as I can tell in my quick reading of the draft, there's nothing motivating this that I could find.
Nothing what?
Motivating this. Like what's the first, if you had a list of what this might be useful for, I can't even think
Was
of.
that not the same list I gave you?
It's very useful for super cookies and stuff.
I guess those are abstract.
Okay, so same list, timestamps, path MTU discovery, something else you want to tell the stack at the other end.
How does
the
this
stack?
Wait,
not application.
I heard somebody say path MTU discovery. I don't understand how.
If you're doing PLP MTU, do you?
You just want to make
out?
You just want to make the packet longer to see if it gets through.
Yeah.
I couldn't figure out what you would put in the option that would help with path MTU discovery, but it doesn't. Okay. I guess I'm not as clever.
All right.
No,
let me
just a minute.
Okay. Let me.
This is not Joe. Okay, I'll let. But You can't quiz me on the details of this when I'm proxying the author.
I realize
so
that.
we should take a lot of this discussion to the list. So I'm happy to take more questions if David thinks there's time, but we really should discuss this on the list with Joe.
We are running a little short on time. Let me propose a path forward for this draft. It's quite clear based on the active discussion we have here, some of which I will generously interpret as opposition, that we are not yet ready to run an adoption call on this. I think Tim's last set of comments were insightful, which is that this draft could use a bit more in the way of motivation. So what I'm going to suggest as the path forward is that the sense the meeting reported back to Joe is interesting concept. Please put more in the draft about what it's good for and what the network will or won't do to these. And we can take a look at that version of the draft and consider whether the working group might adopt it. But I'd like to move on to this topic if I could, because we're running short on time.
Okay, it's just an addition. I'd like to understand what it does to applications that do perform pass-MTU discovery by setting the don't fragment bit.
Sure. Mm-hmm. That would be a good thing to make sure we get captured in the notes.
One thing that I would like, to get to the author is, we have to be very careful not to create a covert channel, particularly one where an operator can insert information that the like super cookies, right? Something like that. So we have
like IP options,
right? And I
hang on, wait a sec. And so one thing that's, I think, a bright line here is, if an application uses the APIs to set these bits, then we have to say that the stack and the because there's going to be an API. And for me, a very important question, bright line, is if an application sets these bits, can the stack or the network tamper with them? And if the answer is they can, then we have a covert channel.
Okay,
and that's very scary.
I believe that's been made clear in discussion. It sounds like we also need to point the author back at the wonderful adventure that was the PlusBoF, and take any and all relevant input from that.
I agree with that, Bob Briscoe. I agree with that, but slightly modify it to say, as long as the covert channel can be closed off, it's okay.
Yeah, and let's not replay this debate here, please.
No.
Yeah, let's. Okay.
Right. No.
Right.
What I mean is, all I meant was that it can be encrypted so that it can't be used as a covert channel. You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is my personal.
Well, give me your last word here, and then we're moving on. No,
you can have it anyway. Go for it.
That's a personal comment. Like, if we really apply what you just said, we can stop all the work in transport.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
It was Joe in the Jabber room. Do we know if Joe Touch was in the Jabber room?
He's not on Meet Echo.
Okay, that's just a thing to clarify at the end of the talk to make sure. Fine.
Okay.
Then please relay those comments and discussion back to the list, because Joe would love to be a part of them.
Yeah, or just tell him to look at the Meetico recording. You can get all of it there.
Mm-hmm.
Just said what.
I'm sure Joe will catch up.
Okay, let's do a real quick heads up here, and then magic happens and we turn to the AQM working group.
Okay, next. Yeah, so this nearly dates back 17 years ago, where we started to propose something like a PHP. Basically, it ended as RC 3662 as informational RC for pair domain behavior. Next. So, question, why comes this up again? So RC 3662 suggested to serve code points. And I also mentioned at that time that it's maybe a mistake proposing CS1 because of its ambiguity, because usually according to 2474 DivServ draft basically says CS1 is better than best effort. And now we have the ambiguity that it's not clear whether CS1 actually means treated better than best effort according to the original DiffServ RC, or whether it means lower effort. So the issues came up especially with the RTC Web QS and the DiffServ intercon draft. Next. And so I wrote this in the draft in order to propose this as a per hop behavior, not as per domain behavior. And the main point is proposing dedicated DSCP for that, so that the ambiguity goes away, and we know that this DSCP means lower effort. So that would update or maybe replace, I don't know, 3662, and at least update 4594. And maybe that's because such a change would also maybe influence the existing and already very advanced drafts for RTC Web or DiffServ Intercon, and also the draft by Fred. And so, yeah, maybe it's hopefully not too late to correct this mistake that we did.
Okay.
Several years ago.
Few comments here, not so much as chair, but as shepherd for RTC Web Cross and an author of DiffServ Intercon and someone involved in figuring out what we want to do at 4594. DiffServ Intercon is not affected by this. It does not have an aggregate for scavenger. We decided not to add that one. RTC Web Cross suggests the situation which we're going to find ourselves, which is it's going to go ahead with CS1, and I think replacing CS1 with a brand new freshly minted DSCP is not going to happen. So it's probably going to be an in addition to as opposed to an instead of exercise. Fred?
Fred Baker, why do you say that the original DiffServ draft placed CS1 above CS0?
I'll take that one as an author of that. If you go all the way back to 2474, which is the original definition,
Yes.
the definition of the class selector code points in that puts them in order.
Relative order, yeah.
Based on the IPv4 precedence.
It's basically.
So why would CS2 not be above CS1?
No, the question is basically.
00010
No.
CS2.
Okay, so the original, 2474
I'm
did
sorry,
is.
no.
That's not CS2. You're not looking at CS2 there, by the way. You're looking at, that's the IP precedence of that code point he's got up there is actually 0. Okay, that's an unused that's an unused code point right now.
Unused code point.
Remind me, 10, is that a local use? Okay, so local use and intended for possible future standardization, or local use and I'm sorry, it's just local. There's some of each.
There's some of each, there's a bank of each. We'll have to figure out which. I didn't check his slides, so I don't know which
This is
which one he pulled
standard,
from.
proposed standard. That's not local use.
It's a question of going back to 2474 and saying which set of numbers did it wind up.
Right.
in.
I mean, I think general idea is pick a DSCP whose first 3 bits are all 0, and then set the last 3 to something plausible.
I checked this, so this would be a standard code point.
Steve Blake, 10 is standards action. Anything
Yes.
ending with a 1 is local use or experimental.
Okay. Thank you, Steve.
So this is Rüdiger Geib, Deutsche Telekom, and you probably all know that I prefer the first 3 bits to be consistently used. So if there is a class AF1, which is not less than best effort, then anything starting with 001 should be better than best effort. That's my point of view, and I guess you all know it in the room.
Yeah.
So I prefer to have a standard on less than best effort. That is required, and we have to agree on a code point, and my personal preference is to have 000, and then a useful standard one. And it has impact on many other drafts, and we should settle the issue, as difficult as it may be.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I support LE as an addition to the CS1 thing. There are still plenty of things treating CS as strict precedents. So an unambiguous identifier for least effort is really needed.
Yes.
Cool.
Steve Blake, I'd just say class selectors were a transition mechanism. 2474 will be 18 years old in December.
And they're never going away. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ron. Brian?
Brian Carpenter, resuming my hat as DiffServ Working Group Chair.
From how many years ago?
From 18 years ago. I think this is the right thing to do. I sort of feel guilty that I didn't make a lot of fuss when 3662 was standardized. But, well, it wasn't standardized, right? It's informational, which is probably why I didn't make a fuss. I think it's time to do this properly. Doing it properly means a code point in the 000 class. So I think this is spot on is what we should do.
You want to run it? Okay. All right. Okay. Can I see a show of hands? How many people have read this draft? It looks like a fair number. So based on what you've seen here, hum if you think this is an interesting piece of work and the working group should adopt this draft. Hum if you think this is a bad idea and this work should not be done. Silence. So I think let's get an 01 draft prepared, and I think you can go ahead and submit that as a working group draft.
Okay. Thanks.
All right.
Stepping back to a previous conversation, do you want me to refer to that in the 802.11 draft?
Let's
yes or no. I don't care.
I would like to keep things in order. So let's keep the 802.11 draft in about its current form, and we'll use the LE draft to update your 802.11 draft if we need to.
That's what you want to do. You want to add that to the list of things that update.
I think so. I hesitate to go use this as a reason to stop stuff in progress. The 802.11 draft is just about done.
Andrew,
I don't see any AD heading for the mic, so it must be okay.
Andrew McGregor, although I have a suggestion, maybe point CS1 at UP2 and leave UP1 unassigned, unmapped for now.
Problem is we've got
Okay,
we've got a fair amount of practice out there with CS1. We've got a fair amount of running code out there with CS1, whether we like it or not.
That's true. But it would still have roughly the same effect if it were at UP2.
It will go on UP2. So
anyway, that.
I would encourage some discussion of this on the list. The plan's still to do it, but we shouldn't be planning something we can't later implement. So let's quickly discuss it. Let's keep currently the draft as we proposed here, but let's discuss where we could fit this and how that might work in.
So we're going to be busy. Okay.
Right.
Tinkerbell shows up, waves her magic wand, and we turn into the AQM working group.
Okay. Anybody not done this?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No, I think we're going to use a combined set of sheets for both working groups. That just makes the most sense. We have announced well in advance that this would be a combined meeting. Okay. So Gory and I get to try to imitate the AQM chairs. I have no idea how well we're going to do at this.
It would go well.
This is the state of their drafts. Coddle is not quite out of the working group yet; should be soon. I think there's a request for folks to please have a look at Coddle to make sure they've got everything covered.
Yeah, Andrew McGregor editing that. Yes, please. I'd like to get any and all comments in really soon because we'd really like to be done with this.
Mm-hmm.
We thought we were before the meeting. Turns out not quite, but
If anybody has anything to say about it, please, very quickly.
Well, this KIT, yeah, I guess there were comments from Paulina stating that still there is ambiguity in the draft, or at least not clear recommendations with respect to re-entering the dropping state and stuff like that.
Absolutely, and it's my bad. I tried to incorporate a previous feedback on that and did not quite get it completely unambiguous. So that's my bad, but we want to address that. Anything else better come real soon.
Different draft there, AQM Pine. It's in 80 follow-up. There was pushback from the ISG on the status, which was that it was experimental. They're requiring something which has never been required of an experimental draft in the past, and which you won't find in the RFC series, which is that they want the experiment to be described in the draft.
You've got an AV saying behind you, Fred.
I have a feeling I know what she wants to say. In any event, the discussion that we've had has been to go ahead and put it in as informational rather than experimental.
Mia Kulevin is responsible ID. So I wouldn't say pushback. There was a question about what's the purpose of the experiment, and we have like this common practice for a while now that we put a section into experiment documents explaining what the purpose of the experiment. It's nothing new. We have it. And it's also not a requirement. It's a recommendation. And given this specific draft, I think there was already a lot of text explaining the experiment, but it didn't spell it out this way. So just clarifying, you know, what are the points, how can you actually probe that these points are changed or are right, just makes it better. I don't think it's not a requirement. It's like, what are your concerns about it?
We were told that it wouldn't go anywhere until we put in a description of the experiment.
Again, I think this was only a request to spell it out, to spell out the context that's there more explicitly.
I'm telling you what we were told.
Yeah, I told you. I told you. How did she tell you? Nobody told me.
I suspect Miria owns what happens to the draft.
Yes.
You want to? Okay.
At any rate, what we're doing is we're putting the word informational in
there. Why I'm at the mic is simply, am I going to have the same conversation with Leah?
Well, and I know that coddle is information.
Oh.
Pretty sure it is.
Yeah. Oh, right. Okay. Going for it.
So
I'm all in favor of informational. If that gets past this stuff, so we have other drafts. Anyway.
Okay. Just a minute. Wait while we find the charter page and we find the drafts.
Yeah.
In future, there is more or less standard text in the transport area for making things experimental and adding in that section to talk about the deployability experiment that needs to be done. So if you're intending to write a draft that's experimental, please talk to your chairs or your AD, and I'm sure they can help you find paragraphs to explain to other people what the experiment is that needs to be done before you deploy a transport mechanism. And CODL is tagged as experimental, it says here.
It says experimental.
That's what it's, oh, just a minute.
It says informational in the draft. The tracker says experimental. Somebody hasn't updated the tracker.
Intended status experimental, actual status informational in the draft header. So it's, it is informational because that's what the draft says, but it's allowed to be experimental by the procedure. So there you go.
At that point, I follow up with the wheelchairs.
Yes, exactly.
I was pretty sure there was a working decision to
All right,
go
all
for
right.
experimental, but yeah.
AD to follow up with AQM chairs. Nice to unearth these little problems in other people's working groups. It's much easier. Okay, so we have two drafts which are more or less done, apart from nobody knows what to do with them next. What happens after this? Because the charter lets more work be done. There's potential to do a bit more work, the potential to recharter, or of course, if there's no work or there's only a little amount of work, then the working group could close. Closing a transport working group might mean some work was transferred to TSVWG. Or that'll be us, yeah. But really, we're not quite at that stage yet. It'd be good to start engaging our brains about what we really want to do in the AQM working group next. So mailing list started, blah, blah, blah. Let's go. Next slide, sorry, yeah.
And there'll be a slide each of these 4 topics.
Do you want to talk on that one?
Okay, so candidate topics for work. We got these slides from Wes, I think. He's got this is the summary. Work that could be done in the working group. Advanced algorithms, standards tracks, algorithm improvements, some new algorithms, and maybe a little more work on architecture. And as he says down the bottom, he says that these might actually have some interaction. Usually when you advance from the standards track, you make some improvement. You make some improvements along the way. There's a slide in each of these topics, Bob. So happy to take cross-topic comments here, and then we'll go one topic at a time. The slides, see what happens.
I was just thinking, given the conversation in ICCRG yesterday about how operators still aren't putting AQM in, whether there's something we can do about AQM that's more about socializing it. I don't know how you do that, and whether that's writing a draft or something like that, but it's more about explaining why, even going down to the level of what
isn't that the AQM, isn't that the, I mean, I'm sure we have drafts that say AQM is a wonderful idea.
Well, we do, the AQM recommendations.
Yes.
It's sort of,
but we don't have an AQM benefits like we had an ECN benefits.
Yeah, it's even getting the level of, when we're talking about congestion, we're not talking about persistent congestion, we're talking about the sort of congestion TCP makes, get really tutorial, if you like.
Something short and as an ID would be interesting to consider, I guess. Always send IDs to the IETF.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Roland Bliss, KIT again. I think maybe operators were reluctant to implement former AQMs due to parameter problems, and also because they fear to lose utilization. So we did some experiments on the 3 proposed AQMs here, and we found that they have different performance with respect to utilization. So depending on their ability to avoid loss synchronization, and that maybe this is a topic that could be discussed, but yeah, so that would turn to point 2 algorithm improvements with respect to that. So we got new insights, but currently we have that under submission, so can't talk about that right now.
ICCRG, I'm sure, would be interested in new, interesting papers which help develop congestion control.
Christian Wiedemann. Actually, I mean, we just had this discussion about what is the experiment. And one thing would be very useful would be an actual experiment report. I mean, explain what happened after you deployed it and what did you observe and what was there. Because that's what we want to learn, don't we?
So Michael Abramson speaking for myself and not as a JavaScribe. So operator talking to other people, 15 years trying to deploy stuff. People still don't know about this. They've heard of buffer bloat. They still don't really understand. I still get thrown in my face, we shouldn't drop packets because that's easier to measure. Everybody who does a speed test, there's still a lot of people that needs convincing, and we need to prove it to them, show them that this is good stuff. So I think there is still a lot of stuff to do. I mean, the mechanisms are there, but like operational aspects, how do you fault find it, how do you monitor it, all that stuff is still to do. So don't close this, keep working. There's 5 years more work to do.
Okay.
All right, okay.
Michael Wessel. Some of these algorithms incorporate a decision, a threshold for changing from ECN marking to dropping when you have an ECN capable traffic. For instance, Pi has that, and that is now set to a certain value. I believe that the sections that talk about future work that is necessary to do for proceeding to standards track should include that this threshold should be evaluated, where precisely that threshold is set. So for instance, in Pi, it's not a should about this, but there is no statement about this particular threshold being a matter for evaluation as we proceed to a proposed standard.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Koen Schepper. With the L4S work, we did a lot of experiments, and one of the results was actually that with the current TCP and the current networks, big queues have actually more advantages than disadvantages. There is only one disadvantage, that's low latency, and maybe price if you have a big throughput. Okay, but it has a lot of advantages because it reduces drop, it increases round trip time fairness, and a lot of other things. So the question is, okay, AQMs are okay, but probably we can't tune them to a low threshold. So that's a little bit, I think, is the blocking case here. And if we do it, we compromise other things. So that's why we did L4S. We said there is...
But just, I'm not quite sure, are you suggesting some extra work in AQM apart from L4S? Or?
Well, evaluations, seeing how effectively can we introduce AQMs with small thresholds.
Research.
And what is the impact? Because our customers, operators, are very concerned about their existing their existing customer experience, and if we would show them a setup with an AQM which is configured small, that will have a big impact on their existing customers.
Sounds like good research work. Yeah.
Yes. Or evaluation work.
Well, yeah, but evaluation work isn't done in an IETF working group. Yeah.
Mike.
Yeah, come up.
Exactly what the previous person said, writing up experiments. These are experiments of on existing AQMs that Koen is saying that is the result and it could be written up.
Is that network operational experience we're talking about, or research lab experiments that underpin the protocol work?
We did our experiments in a lab which is used to show customers whether solutions work. When we deploy a solution, they come and look for interoperability and what's the impact on their existing customers.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Aaron Falk, I want to also give a +1 to Christian's suggestion on an experimental experience report. I think that we're sort of heading into an area that is generally it might be an area where the IAB can help either through a workshop or through a plenary talk, depending on whether the result of the experiment report is that we know what we're ready to recommend to operators that they enable this and what the settings are or not. If the answer is not, then maybe a workshop to try to get together people who have experience experimenting this with operators to try to get more people experimenting with this so we can get a better understanding of the landscape. If it turns out that we actually have a pretty good idea and are ready to recommend it in deployment, then we should do a plenary talk and maybe try to get somebody to go to some of the operators groups and talk about it there. But I think my understanding is that the actual way that you get this out there is you work with the vendors who are the ones who've got the best relationships with the operators for how to set up their equipment.
Actually, my first question was, did you have more slides?
We did.
We do. There's one slide for each of the 4 topics. The discussion sounds like it's segued into more experience and write-up of that experience as being a key element of any advancement of the algorithm standards track. So I went to that slide.
Okay. Dave Todd. So I strongly agree with the need for more research as to what group that should be in. To me, that starts getting vectored into things like ICCRG. As for the operators, that to me is an outreach to some other set of groups, be it NANOG, Broadband Forum, something like that. As for ongoing work into the AQM working group, in part, the idea of bringing it back into TSVG is to get more visibility across all these groups, rather than us sitting in our corner with our perfect networks and so on, having fun. So I would support the suspension of the AQM working group while we get some of these other things. As for this particular slide, I note that the only algorithm I know that's actually seen substantial deployment so far is FQCuddle.
Well, and Cable Lab's specification, of course. Okay. Okay. Because Cable Labs is specified pipe.
Cool.
So I think Andrew McGregor, I think the Toki's recent work on 802.11 AQM down in the device driver actually might, once it has had a chance to bake a bit further, belong in here as a recommendation to lower layers as to how they might do things in certain circumstances. That is not ready yet and won't be, I would guess, for a year or so. Although it might see substantial deployment before then, it's still being banked.
So it sounds like Wes's second little bullet here, more deployment measurement and right with experience is a key outcome here as to what ought to happen before thinking about advancing these algorithms on the standards track. All right. Okay. I got a slide here that suggests there might be some interest in tinkering with the algorithms. I will observe as a TSVWG chair that this is a lousy forum for doing that. One of the virtues of AQM is that it is a place for people to focus on this kind of low-level tinkering if there's strong interest in doing it. Does anyone in the room want to express any level of interest in doing this?
Is there a working group called Wet Paint? And we're going to be continuously fiddling with these things. There's some cool stuff in Cadence, cool stuff in FQ. All this stuff is cool. But to me, it's research now. We're back to that. We've already chopped 2 orders of magnitude possibilities off of queues in the internet. Today, I would prefer we move forward on getting it deployed as is.
Yeah, Ronald, this again. Yeah, with respect to GSP, for example, it isn't so good in distinguishing, let's say, good burst versus a standing queue. So it causes, at least from our experiments, it causes packet drops on short-term bursts, which, for example, call avoids. So there are differences in these algorithms, and maybe one can improve GSP with respect to that.
Michael Wetzler, saying the obvious, things that are research in this space are always welcome in ICCRG.
Thank you.
Yeah, Bob Briscoe, I would add also attacks against any AQM, not just DCN. That's an area.
Okay, yes.
And Koen de Schipper, I want to confirm what Dave said. FQCuddle solves a lot of these balloon effects that we try to solve in L4S. And with L4S, we try to do the same with only one queue. So I think one which could be deployed is FQ with an AQM. It solves a lot of these things, but it's harder to implement, okay? In the network, sorry. In a residential gateway, okay, but in the network.
Okay.
FQPy. There have been a number of different prototypes put together. We wrote 2. After you do fair queuing, it doesn't matter how you drop. It really doesn't matter.
Christian Itema. I was wondering whether there should be the same relation between AQM, the AQM working group or a successor and the ICCRG as there is between, for example, TLS and CFRG.
Sounds like a...
Like TCPM.
As in, for example, let me explain. There is a constant stream in security of new encryption algorithms, but they don't go directly to the working group.
Okay.
Yeah. They go to the research group until the research group has them validated. And when the research group has them validated, then they go into publication of a standard, approval, etc. And it seems that we have the need for about the same kind of relation there.
I think that's exactly the mechanism we have for congestion control methods in general, which the IETF transport working groups don't generally make judgment calls on the research, but ask ICCRG to do work in that space, present them, discuss them, review what's out there, and then come back with a recommendation saying, we found good research here. That makes ICCRG a rather busy and important research group because it serves the IETF directly, but I think that role will be appropriate when we start entering the research domain of saying what happens when you combine mechanism A with mechanism B, or you tweak parameter A versus B. We don't have time to go through graphs in the standards group. ICCRG is the right platform to discuss this, but we need the people to actually discuss it there. We need people to really get into that and discuss it, and I think that'll be very valuable. So I like the comment.
Andrew McGregor, plus one there. I just wanted to note we did something quite analogous years ago with HIP-RG and the HIP working group while they were still active. And I think a positive outcome from deciding what to do for AQM is that AQM goes idle until things come out of ICCRG.
And I think that discussion's just covered this slide, which is new algorithms. Please go to ICCRG. Which brings us to this last slide. Michael, did you want to say something about that?
Yeah, Michael say.
Okay.
Okay, just the last comment about this. Something that maybe not everybody is so aware of, but I as a chair am well aware of. ICCRG used to be a very busy group. We used to get lots of requests, and that has been declining over the last years or last meetings. So there is, I mean, we are really interested in getting this kind of stuff. So it's definitely welcome. We have space in the agenda for these things.
So David, I'm confused now because I thought after the L4S BOF we were going to be bringing dual Q probably.
We're not making a judgment call on the L4S work. We're making suggestions on techniques and parameters in these algorithms. So if you're going to discuss a new algorithm in general, then ICCRG is a good place to bring that up. The L4S thing has gone one stage further to a BOF, and that is with our ADs. We're not commenting on the outcome of that BOF.
Okay.
In addition, what you're seeing here is unsynchronized slide development. Wes made up these slides, not seeing the L4S BOF results. And there's a question mark there, so don't worry. This is not an attempt to hijack L4S. Really, it's not.
Yeah, it's just this slide come up, and you said that with this slide up there. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't make these slides. I just present them.
Dave Todd, yeah, I got up for one slide, which is the next one. I mean, they have this one here. If you wanted to add other algorithms, go back to 3. Go back to 3. Several years ago in the AQM working group, I gave a talk called The Case for Comprehensive Queue Management. And I was essentially chased off the stage. And as a result, we decided to go off and tackle it with a set of algorithms in Cake. So the whole diff-serve interaction with how AQMs could work is kind of hand-wavy. And I'm not really sure. Didn't want to do it in the AQM working group. I didn't want to do it at all. But we've made a stab at it in Cake. So you could put that on the slide. They could find a home. It's hard.
We need to find home for internet drafts which fit into charters.
Sorry?
We need to find homes for internet drafts that fit into charters.
Yes.
And if they don't fit into charters, then we need to discuss that with either the ADs or TSBWG.
I just fully described Cake's goal, which was to integrate diff-serve and AQM, and that was hard.
Yeah.
Still is.
We keep moving. We were told we run over by 30 minutes at most, but we don't intend to do that unless we really have to. Oh, Maria says we should go. Yeah. We'll go there. Go for the last slides. Finish.
This is it.
Right.
So okay, we did quite some years research in ICCRG and congestion controls, and none of them have been deployed. And there's a reason for that, because they cannot be deployed.
I don't think we're talking ICCRG at the moment. Let's keep going on. Final comments on whether we should continue the AQM working group.
So certainly, link layers are hard. The work that's been going on Wi-Fi proved just how hard it can be. And there's the work that Bob has been doing on understanding 3GPP. That's really hard. And adapting to increases and changes in hardware is hard. And having a home for where we are talking about these things would be nice. But I'm not sure if it's AQM.
Okay.
One thing, Michael Abrahamson, one thing that's not mentioned here. So where are the Yang models for monitoring these being developed if we pause this?
Okay, question asked and noted. Yang is becoming important. And Mira,
Yeah, I would like to wrap up the discussion here.
are you talking as AD or individual?
As an AD. So I'm happy to see so many people here, and happy to see that there's interest in AQM, but that's actually no news for me. I know that a lot of people working on AQM stuff. The question for me is there enough energy in the working group to do standardization work that is important for the IETF? And I don't have a clear answer to this yet. I don't think we need to have an idle AQM working group. If we don't have an AQM working group and there's any need for AQM work, it goes to transport working group. Transport, yeah. And so we always have a forum to do this kind of work. So and we don't close the AQM working group right now because there's still some documents. So it will be open for another couple of months. So basically, if you think you have AQM work that is important for the IETF to work on, you should submit a draft between now and Seoul. If there are no drafts anymore, we probably close the working group and defer all the work to transport working group.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for persevering. It was good to see you at this TSVWG meeting.
Rudiger, you had one
I have one question. What I heard from the discussion is that the ICCRG is going to take the decision on the best ECN method. So
they are going to look at curves, results, experiments, and provide advice on what those might mean to the standards community. Yeah.
How do I, as an operator, pick the one which is suitable for my fixed network, for my 4G network, and for specific applications? I think we don't have the criteria to decide on what is the best if you have many, and we will never get out of this unless we have something we agree, at least some of us agree upon this is useful.
There's maybe a difference between the people who do research that help standards and the people and the operators who need standards to do things. And one is more IETF oriented, one is more IRTF oriented.
Okay. Thank you all very much. We got plenty to do on the mailing list, and we'll see you there. We've got the blue sheets. Good. Right. Okay. Stuart, could you email us the notes from the first session, please? Okay, we'll have to go. Have to get in there. I can't get to Etherpad through micro firewall. Part of the problem.
I can sort it.
Okay, you can get it?
Yeah,
Good.
no
Thank